everyone, this is Bria from Mythological Empath, and today we are going to be doing a video on my top 10 favorite romantic / shoujo manga. Let's get started. So this manga is called Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, and it follows Nini Hashiro, right? Yeah, Hashiro. And she is a boy obsessed teenage girl that just really wants to date someone really badly. And apparently when she confessed to the most popular boy in class for the first time, he said he wouldn't date her because she had daikon-shaped legs. So then she became super self-conscious about it and started after that having crushes on a bunch of on boys, but then was too afraid to confess because she was afraid that that same thing would happen again. So she ended up finding out about a rumor about a ghost that lives in the third floor girls' bathroom in the third stall, and so she goes there because this ghost apparently is supposed to be able to grant any wish, and it's someone called Hanako-san, and apparently in the rumor everyone thought it was a girl. Surprise! No, it's a boy named Hanako-kun, and he decides he wants to grant her wish without actually using magic and tries to help her other ways. And then a whole mess of chaos ends up happening, and it ends up just being a super wholesome, really funny horror kind of manga. It follows the two just trying to figure things out with her love life, figure things out with him. There's a huge mystery behind him, how he died, why he does what he does. It's just really cool, and it keeps you going with it because, there's a mystery behind it, and, but then it also keeps you hooked with a romance aspect of it. And then they always have comic relief in it to spice things up and, not keep it from getting flat, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so I highly recommend this one. Go check it out. Beast of Abigaile, I think it's pronounced. I don't know. I looked it up and people just know what Abigail, but I don't know how to pronounce it with the E. So if anyone knows how to pronounce it with the E, let me know. But yeah, so this manga I became addicted to when it first came out, or not when it first came out, because I found it after they printed the fourth manga of it, because it's ended and there was 4 mangas to this manga. So yeah, so I became addicted to this when I first read it, but then as I got older I noticed there was some flaws with it and it kind of went down in my ranks, but I still absolutely love it. I love the idea that this author came up with, and even though she kind of wasn't able to finish it totally, it wasn't a completely satisfying ending, but it was satisfying enough for me to still love it and for it to still be in my top 10. So this manga follows Nina. She is a pretty much average high school girl until she ends up going through something where she ends up getting bullied in school for sticking up for one of her best friends. And she kind of gets ostracized from her school, so her parents end up sending her away with her uncle to an island that her uncle works at with her aunt. And so she goes to this island, and her uncle she ends up seeing something, and her uncle tells her it's another island off to the side that has a castle on it, and she asks her uncle what it is, and he just says it's some kind of old jail type thing. And so she just kind of finds it fascinating, but she says it has a really freaky aura to it, so she kind of was like, I'm gonna stay away from that. But then she ends up a boy ends up escaping from there, and the police or the guards are trying to like get him. And then so she took karate when she was younger, or some sort of martial arts. I don't know if it was karate, but some sort of martial arts. And so she goes after him and is able to like tackle him down. And then he bites her. Yeah, you see where this is going. So he bites her, and all of a sudden she grows her like her little ears, and she ends up having a little tail. And she gets booted off to the island with him and discovers there's a whole another race of people being imprisoned there, and she's kind of got to figure out the whole thing, like how to blend in with these people, because these people do not like humans. And so she's got to be able to blend in with them, but also she's like, oh my gosh, how do I turn back to being a human? And she's got to deal with the whole, like their whole different kind of culture they have there, because they have a totally different kind of culture, because they're like kind of like werewolf people, but they're called something different. I can't remember what they were called. But yeah, so it's just a really cool, wholesome story. It ends up obviously being a romance. But yeah, so I really liked it, because I mean, whatever, you don't call me a furry, but it's got like the whole like wolf aspect to it, where like these people are kind of like half human, half wolf, so they have the kind of animal instincts. So it's just kind of, and she did a lot of research. She must have done a lot of research on like wolf packs and the way wolves interact, and she really put a lot into this book. So like you read it and you're like, oh my gosh, I learned something about wolves today reading this. But it's just such a cool, wholesome story about her, you know, trying to figure things out and trying to figure out herself and where she wants to be as a person, you know, like, you know, just figuring things out. And it's just so cool, and she changes so many people's lives being in this prison, and it's just such a cute, wholesome story. And you know, obviously they have stuff in it to make it to break up the whole dark theme. Yeah, so definitely check this one out. Like I said, she ended up having to cut it shorter than she wanted to, so the ending is satisfying, but it leaves you wanting more. So I mean, maybe we could all vouch for her to continue this series or make a sequel. Let's get this started. Like hashtag continue continue Beast of Abigail or Abigail or whatever it's called. That wolf boy is mine. Which is funny because that's following right after Piece of Abigail. Okay, so this book is about a girl named Komugi. Hopefully I'm pronouncing these names right, because I'm not Japanese. So I don't know how to pronounce things perfectly. So anyway, yeah, so it's about a girl named Komugi, and she her parents are divorced, and she went with her mother, what is it called, to go live in I believe Tokyo, but then when she's like 16-year-old, she lived with her mom like for a while. She was like she used to live in the country with her mom and dad when she was little, but then moved to to Tokyo with her mother when she was a little bit older, and now she's like 16. And her mom got like an opportunity to go somewhere on business. So her mom decides that it'd be best for her to go live with her dad for a little while in the small town. And her father and her grandparents like own like some kind of noodle shop. So she ends up going there and meeting this little guy right here. I think his name is Yu. Yeah, I think it's Yu. And he turns out, well, at first he's like kind of weird, where he's like sniffing her, and it's like, oh my gosh, you smell like noodles, and she's like, oh my gosh, don't do that, that's weird. So yeah, she's kind of freaked out by him at first, and is like, okay, this guy's weird, stay away from me. But then she ends up falling asleep. Well, no, she yeah, I think she doesn't fall asleep outside. She ends up going outside, and I think he was he was a human, but then he had got those like little wolf ears, and she saw him and she's like, oh my gosh, like what the frick's going on with this guy? And he was the one that was sleeping, and then he woke up and he saw her, and then he transformed into a wolf, and he's like, you better keep my secret or else I'm gonna eat you. And she's like, oh my gosh, and then passes out. So he is actually a like obviously a half wolf, half human type guy, and it's all about like all these type like half human, half or they're not actually half human, they're actually just animals, but they are kind of like that Japanese legend where they can use like magic to transform into humans because they don't want to live as animals all the time because living as an animal is boring apparently. So they kind of, it's a bunch of boys that go to this her high school that are from the mountains, and they're all actually animals. But they end up having, like, they have this kind of magic where they try to erase her memory, but her memory cannot be erased for some reason. So she knows their secret, and most of them, I think, are like terrified that she knows their secret, and they kind of like are threatening her. They're like, don't you dare tell anyone, or whatever. But then they end up accepting her at some point or another, and then there's like this really cute romance between her and you. And like at first he was like, you know, whatever. I don't know. You'll have to read it. I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, so it's a really cute romance, and there's a lot of mystery behind it because there's a lot of mystery behind you because he's different than the other animals, and there's a lot of mystery behind the girl because, like, why can't her memory be erased? What is so special about her? And all that stuff. So it ends up being really cute, and I just love the, like, whole, like, I don't know, like, I'm all for, like, the women empowerment stuff, but I think it's also super cute when when guys are protective, not obsessive, but protective of girls. I think it's like just super cute and wholesome. I love it in these kinds of books. But yeah, so highly recommend. Go check it out. Is Honey So Sweet, and I've actually read this book so many times that, like, you can see like it chipping at the edges. I've read this one a lot of times. That's why it's sort of in the, not quite in the middle, but it's like almost in the middle, where I love it enough to read it a lot. I can fall back on this book a lot. But it's not my absolute favorite where I'm like, oh my gosh, the writing is amazing. Sometimes it's just nice to have like just a wholesome book to read when you're just like, I don't know what to read. Let's just read this because it's not too complicated for my brain. Okay, so this follows Neo Kagura, this girl here, and Taiga, I think Asadi. So, like I said, butchering names. But anyway, so this girl is like kind of like a scaredy cat. And, but she ends up meeting this boy one day. It's raining out. She's home from middle school in the middle of the rain, and she sees this guy just lying there beating the crap out of, just bleeding and all that crap, and she's like, oh my gosh, but he looks terrifying to her because obviously he looks like he's a Yankee or whatever, and which a Yankee is pretty much like a gangster, but she was gonna just leave him because she was terrified of him, but then she was like, oh, I can't just leave him there. So what she does is she leaves him some band-aids and her umbrella, and he's unconscious, by the way. So he's knocked out, which, you know, normally you would call someone to help him, but she's kind of she's what they call her, like, not a coward, but she's just terrified of anything scary. So she just leaves him some band-aids, and she puts her umbrella over him and then just leaves. And when he wakes up, he sees the stuff, and her umbrella has her name on it, and he instantly just falls in love with her over her name, for her just, you know, being kind enough to actually care about him, you know, because he was never shown, obviously, any kindness by his peers before. So when high school starts, he comes and asks for practically her hand in marriage. No, he says that he asks if she will date him with marriage in mind, which is like just, oh, it's so cute and so wholesome. I just love it. But ends up being, and she doesn't know him, so she's like, and he's like one of those it's like one of those kind of classic ideas where the guy just looks super terrifying, like his facial features and stuff like that. And so she sees him, and everyone in their class is like, oh my gosh, he's so dangerous. Like, I heard he beat up someone at the first day of school or something, and there's tons of rumors about him. And she's like, oh my gosh, he's asking me to date him. Like, I really don't want to, but he'll probably beat me up if I say no. So she ends up just saying, yeah, sure, because she's like she's just terrified. But then there's this whole like whirlwind romance, and it's cool because it's not just about romance too. It's about people that are kind of outcasts, how they find friendship, and how, you know, right now, even though it seems bleak and it's really hard to make friends, especially when you're like an introvert in high school, that things will eventually turn around and you'll make friends and have like lifelong, you know, friendships and stuff like that. So it's just really cute and really wholesome. And like I said, I love the aspect of it's not just a romance, it's like making friends, and it has to do with family and you know, how family can affect your life and all that stuff. It's just super cute and super wholesome, and I highly recommend it. Is a really long title, and they actually have 2 mangas about this, so I'm assuming it used to be a book and then they made 2 mangas about it, but I like this one because I just like the artistry. They have another one out there. I don't know if they're different. I'll have to read it. Let me know down in the comments if you want me to check out the other manga just to see if it's any different from this one. But this one is The White Cat's Revenge as Plotted from the Dragon King's Lap. Wow, which is a mouthful. And this one's super cute. It follows Ruri, which I love these. I love the names, and I just love the art. I just love this story. It's so cute. It follows Ruri, and she's basically her parents are kind of famous, and they're kind of like stars, and so she's really like cute and, you know, outside beautiful or whatever. And then, but she has this like friend, and she's had her since she was like really young, and for some reason her friend, even and her friend's cute too, but everyone is just obsessed with her friend. Like, her friend sticks around her all the time, but everyone just loves her friend, and anytime Rory does anything to upset her, they're like, oh my gosh, that Rory, you know, whatever. The only people that really loved her and, you know, treated her as a person was her mom and dad, but everyone else is just like, oh, that's that girl's best friend, and, you know, whatever, and she better treat her good, you know. So, but like, and Rory, no matter what, she tried to get away from her friend because they weren't really even friends. It was more like her friend was toxically obsessed with her. And so Rory kept trying to get away from her, like trying to go into colleges she didn't think she'd be able to get into and all that stuff. And no matter what she did, she would never be able to get rid of her friend, until one day, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, her friend and a couple of the friends that were around them somehow got sucked into this other dimension slash world, got just like set into this new world, where there's like priests and magic and all that kind of stuff. And they were saying that her best friend was to be the new princess, the new queen. She was like the chosen one or whatever. And she's like, okay, cool. I just want to do my own thing. I kind of want to go back to my world. Maybe you guys can just keep her and I'll leave. But the priests, obviously it's the same thing, where they're just like, oh my gosh, this girl, like, she's ruining our perfect princess. And they're like, you can't go back. There's no way you can go back to your own world, but we'd still have to get rid of you because you're holding our princess back or whatever. Like, they came up with some random excuse. So the priests end up taking her into the woods and dropping her off in the woods all tied up and stuff like that. and she ends up being saved by several different people along the way, and ends up being loved by these little fairy things. They've got a couple on the back too. So he ends up being loved by these little fairy things, and apparently in this world it's the fairies that make the magic. So if you're loved by the fairies, you have a lot of magic, and if you're hated by the fairies, you're either get no magic or they will incinerate you, because these fairies are psychotic. They're very, I think there's a lot of toxicity in this book, but not in a bad way. I think that they show good, good relationships and bad. Then she ends up meeting the Dragon King, obviously, because she is loved by the fairies, and it's just this whole world building. There's a whole, I have to say, that's what I love. I love the world building. I love the artistry behind it, and I just love the story. Like I said, there's a lot of toxicity in this book. But if you can recognize it. And also I think she shows that you kind of gotta walk away from toxic people and know your boundaries, and know that you need time away from people, and I think she does a really good job showing that. But there's just this whole thing about and there's also people that are anthropomorphic, I hope I just said that right, where there's like dragon people and other people. So it basically ends up being sort of like the human like priest versus the human animal thing. And yeah, so it's just a cute little wholesome story about magic in a whole other world, and good relationships versus bad relationships, and just I don't know, I just love this book. It's really cute. You'd have to check it out. There's a lot going on in this book if you haven't been able to tell. So it's definitely something you have to read to be able to totally and utterly understand it. But yeah, so I do highly recommend this still though, and yeah, I think it's a really cute book. Is A Sign of Affection. And like this one is a really cute too. I love this artistry too. I'm a sucker for great art, let's just say. But this one's really, really cute. This one follows a girl named Yuki, this girl right here, and she is deaf. And I love how it basically goes through this whole thing of showing how hard it could be for deaf people in this world, but also how if you really try your hardest and you're really passionate about something, how you can live in this world as a deaf person, and how you can actually you can make it livable. She's just so determined, and like she makes it into college, and she shows people that she can do it even though she's deaf. So it's a story about Yuki and that, and then it's also a story about Izumi. Okay, and then it follows Izumi, which is a guy that I think he lived in Japan for a little while, but he pretty much grew up in Germany. And so he's had to learn a lot of different languages, learning Japanese, learning English, learning German. So he's learned a lot of different languages, and it made him passionate about travel and learning languages and learning body language and just learning, how people communicate with each other. He's very passionate about it. And then he one day meets Yuki on a train when a guy's trying to ask Yuki for directions, and she's trying to explain it to him through sign language that she cannot understand what he's saying. And he ends up coming over and helps the guy out and helps her out in turn, because he helps the guy, so he's not asking her for directions anymore. And then he sees that she is using sign language, and it's not just that I think the guy was a foreigner and he was speaking English. I could be totally wrong about this. He notices that Yuki, it's not that she doesn't know how to speak English, it's that she can't speak at all, or it's because she can't understand him. She can read lips, but she can't understand someone, I think, if they're speaking a different language other than Japanese. or if they're speaking away from her, you know, not talking directly and she can't read the lips, or speaking really fast. So, but then he sees that she's using sign language and he finds her instantly fascinating and just wants to learn so much more about her because he's like, oh my gosh, like communication, like I've never, you know, he's never encountered someone before that has to communicate through their body language more than someone that's deaf. You know, and then, but she instantly has a crush on him too. I don't remember exactly why at first. I think it's maybe because like he kind of came to her rescue, and maybe because he was kind of fascinated at the fact that she was deaf and didn't just kind of instantly be like, oh, that's tough. All right, well, bye, you know? So, yeah, so it's a story about these two, and it's just so cute and so wholesome. It's a, you know, it's got such good relationships in here, and shows what a totally healthy relationship would look like. I mean, he can be a little bit pushy here and there, but he always, you know, respects her boundaries. Always respects her boundaries. And but it's because I think it's because he's just so in love with her from like the first time he met her, because he was just so fascinated by her. But yeah, so it's just such a cute romance, you know. It just shows like a really healthy relationship, and it does really show, it's so real, you know, like the struggles of being deaf and the struggles of even being in a relationship. It's just so real. That's why I absolutely love this, just because it's so real. So like I said, I highly recommend this one as well. I know I'm not saying that about all of them, but I do. These are my top 10 favorite. I recommend all of them. All right, and so I wanted to take a minute too and please ask to please like and subscribe to this video. It really helps me to build my business and build this channel and be able to continue to share my content with everyone. Yeah, just like I said, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. If you leave a comment, it helps boost my ranks in the algorithm, so I get to be able to be seen by a lot more people. So please continue to share and like my video. And moving on to the next manga. Hey guys, it's Editing Bria, and I just realized that this video is like an hour long, even after I've like cut it down quite a bit. So I'm gonna have to divide it into 2 parts. This will probably be about the first 5, and then I'm going to be putting the second amount, I'm gonna make it a separate video that's gonna come out in probably a couple days to like a week or so from now. So stay tuned for that, and have an amazing day, and I will see you soon.